So, and I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Ann. Everybody know Ann? Have we met? Okay.
I introduced myself already.
Yeah.
We did.
Gary?
Peggy, I'm Peggy.
And I'm Mickey.
And Mickey? And I'm Bruce. And here we are. We're going to talk about the Course in Miracles. And you've got a Course in Miracles. Have you read the Course in Miracles? It looks like you've read parts of it.
Parts of it.
Parts of it?
Never as.
Okay. Okay. So, two complete thought systems. To me, this is the key to understanding the whole Course in Miracles, right here. Two complete thought systems. Love and fear, which we've talked about over and over in here.
Okay, now do you want strawberry?
Awake and asleep. At the very, very beginning of the Course in Miracles, in the introduction, it tells the story of the whole book, the story of the whole Course. It says, that which is real cannot be threatened, that which is unreal does not exist. Herein lies the peace of God. It says love is the only thing that's real. Fear is not real. But it also says this, if you do read the Course, it says, although it's not real, don't discount its power to have I'm going to paraphrase, to have an effect upon your experience here. Fear will have an effect upon your experience because you embrace a concept and you accept it as being true and real. Obviously, that then becomes factored into your moment. So, when I'm in a fear-based thought system, false evidence appearing real, when I look at something and I judge it with my human mind, and I accept my judgment as being true and valid, obviously I'm not seeing the true picture, right? I can't see both simultaneously. I got to pick one, right? That's why the Course says two complete thought systems. Now, we've talked about this before many times. Love is now. Always now. Meaning, the reality of this moment, based on love, is a constant. Never change. Remember the Bible saying, God is that which never changes. God is love, and God is that which never changes. Love never ever changes. From a human perception, I used to love you, but I don't love you anymore. Did we ever love in that moment? We never really touched on real love. What we touched on was, I liked the relationship we had in the form in which I was perceiving it. I no longer like that relationship we're having. I perceive it's different, it's changed. So I don't want it anymore. Hence a divorce. Yeah. I used to love that person. I don't love them anymore. No. I enjoyed being in this particular relationship in its form in which I held it. That was nice. But then when it didn't satisfy me anymore, we get rid of it. False evidence appearing real. Anyway, it's part of a system over here. This is the thought system. Thought system of man. And we're going to include women in that too. Thought system of man. Ego. That's what ego is. Ego is a perceived reality as opposed to what is actually there. I'm perceiving it, but I'm not truly experiencing the fullness. Right? I've blocked God out of this equation. I've blocked out love in that moment. What happens to the love if I let go of my perceptions. If I have a judgment I'm holding and I let go of the judgment, what happens? What? I automatically awaken to what is in this moment, right? A shift takes place. Did God do this to me? See, God doesn't come in and out of our lives. Does reality pop into my life in a moment? When Jesus said, that which you seek already exists, you just don't see it, means if I'm in my dream, I'm going to put dream on this side also. If I'm in my dream, I'm making up a lot of the rules. It's my dream. You have your dream, you have your dream. When you have your dreams at night, who makes up the rules? You're the dream maker. What people don't realize is, in this dimension of time and space, even when we're walking around, in many ways, we're in charge of the dreams. Meaning, I'm not in charge of every detail, obviously, because I am not God. I am one with God, and I initiate things, I bring things about based upon what I hold as my treasure. Remember that saying, where your treasure is, there you'll find your heart? You ever heard that? You heard that. Anyway, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. That's the way it was said. Obviously, because whatever I deem the most important thing for me and mine, I'm going to focus my attention on bringing that about. Right? Whatever it is. Whether I want that beautiful home that I've been dreaming about, I'm going to put my time and attention on, and everything, well, depending on how important it is to me, if it's the number one factor, I'm going to put a lot of time and attention on it. I'm going to look and say, well, what do I need to do? How do I get here? How do I do that? How do I do that? So you must define your treasure. My treasure is either love-based or fear-based. To me, here's the Course in Miracles in a nutshell. The Course says, you can experience the atonement. The atonement. At 1 minute. Anytime you wish. Anytime. What you have to give up is your illusions. You have to give up the attachment to the form that you've been hanging on to. That's why Jesus said, you really want to be my disciple, you have to forsake everything and everyone, including yourself. Meaning, your perceived reality of what is, you've got to let that go. In exchange, you're going to get what is. You're going to let go of fear, and you're going to experience love. Some people look and say, well, how can I trust that? You want me to give up, but you don't show me what I'm going to get when I give it up.
That's where faith comes into play.
That's where faith, faith is a necessary ingredient in order to move. And I say this, faith is a necessary ingredient to get the process started. But then once you recognize, and we've talked in here a long time about the mechanics of creation and how it works. Once you've declared your intention, and once you make it your treasure to awaken, you'll find that the universe will bring you an experience that will validate that will build on, little by little, and as clear as you become, the clearer you become, the quicker the process. The more you release your attachment, the faster the energies can move and give you that which you just stated you wanted. But that means our ego has to get out of the way. And we talked in here before about, in Prophet of Madman, I said the anatomy of the soul. We all have an ego-based thought mind, an ego-based thought system, and we also have the spirit within. We have both. We have two complete systems within ourselves. Remember that woman who talked about the brain, and she said, when she was having
That's true.
the stroke, and she could see the functioning of the brain from a conscious standpoint. She was separating herself from the actual physical body, and she saw that one side of the brain was stuck in the linear thinking, and the other side was beyond. One side of the brain was the spiritual view that went beyond this particular point in time. We have those thought systems within ourselves at odds with one another. The Course in Miracles says this: you have a miracle every time you go from a fear-based thought and you let it go, and then you experience reality, even if it's for a second. You went from fear to love. There's a miracle. This book says, here's a whole course, and how to train yourself to stay centered and focused, so not only do you have a moment of experiencing the miracle, but you become one with that. You become beyond the journey. You wake up, in other words. You reach the atonement. That's a hard thing to accept without experience. I understand. And we've all gone through and had our own moments that build to greater and greater degrees of acceptance. Remember I said in here many times, salvation, to me, salvation, the treasure. The treasure is yours. And the only thing that is required is acceptance. God is bestowing upon us the opportunity to experience this atonement every moment. God's not judging anyone and saying you're not ready, but we're saying. I remember had a customer in here one day and saying, she said just like this, well, God's not ready for me yet. What? What do you mean God's not ready for you? God's ready for us at any moment. We're not ready to accept that spirit within. That's a different case. So one of the most important factors in all of this is to recognize that, and I've said this numerous times, you are in charge of you. When we can take responsibility for ourselves, that speeds up the process. When I don't have to look outside of me and look for that person for my atonement, when I become responsible for every moment, that process gets speeded up considerably. Okay, that all being said, why don't we pick up where we left off, Mick? If you know where we left off, that'd be great.
Okay.
Because
What page do you have? Yeah,
Page 40.
page 40. It's the second paragraph.
this is in the section for the teachers now in the back of the book. And is this, how should the teacher of God spend his day? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
What lesson?
We're in the back of the book,
It's
the
lesson 16.
manual for the teacher, page 40. If you have the same book, the very, very back.
Supposedly has them all.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the
But
last
it's the
big
very, very back. It's the manual for teachers back here.
Okay.
And, yeah, we're
Page 40.
page 40, it's 46. Oh, there we are.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. So, why don't you start?
To the advanced teacher of God, this question is meaningless. There is no program, for the lessons change each day. Yet the teacher of God is sure of but one thing. They do not change at random. Seeing this and understanding that is true, he rests content. He will be told all that his role should be this day and every day. And those who share that role with him will find him, so they can learn the lessons for their day together. Not one is absent from one. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to get my glasses out after this. I'll try to do it without them. Now, one is absent whom he needs. Now, one is sent without a learning goal already set, and one which can be learned that very day. For the advanced teacher of God, then, this question is superfluous. It has been asked and answered, and he keeps in constant contact with the answer. He is set, and he sees the road on which he walks stretch surely and smoothly before him. That's really that was awful.
Wow. So I thought we did this, but maybe we're redoing it.
Well,
did.
we
It's the
did
first
the
We're gonna
first
do it?
paragraph.
Okay,
yeah.
good. I knew we did it once. But anyway, this is alluding to the fact that when you are choosing to experience the true spiritual self, is there any separation between you and God?
No.
There is no separation. In my book, Prophet of Madman, I said, God is a formless consciousness. And as spirit, we are units of that consciousness. When I say, I surrender my ego's agenda in lieu of my connectedness to God. When I do that, and I'm sincere and true, then I know one thing. God is going to guide my next moment. I can be assured of that, and everyone can be assured of that, that the moment as it's unfolding is perfect. Now, who could accept that?
Hard.
It's hard.
It's a control issue.
It's a control issue. Could you accept the premise of it? Yeah. I would say, if you can't accept the premise of it, then don't even waste your time, because it would be a total waste of time. The idea is this. To begin with, we have to understand that God is with us every given moment. God is unconditionally loving, and God would never, ever, ever mislead you and give you something that was not exactly what you were calling for.
Then you say what we're calling for.
Well, when I say we,
Then,
right.
that sounds different than,
It's
It's
okay.
okay, go ahead, yeah.
that sounds different than receiving guidance from God.
Right.
And yet I know we're connected, and if we can tap into that connection, that should work.
Now, when I say this, Gary, when I say we are calling for, I'm not talking about the ego's calling for. When I say God is going to give you exactly what you're calling for, if I am sincere and I'm saying my objective is to participate on a conscious level, then I'm speaking from spirit. Right? I'm laying down my ego life, as Christ said. I don't have an agenda any longer. But even if I had an agenda, okay? Even if I say this, I'm going to call for something that's a combination of both of those things. Okay? I'm not perfect. My ego mind's here, and I want that to be a part of my next moment. Okay, fine. That's what I'm calling for. A combination of the two. What's God going to give me? Exactly what I call for. A combination of the two. Not a pure moment, but maybe a few clouds in the way, but some of truth is in that moment. Now, it didn't come to me in its purest form. Why? Because I didn't request it in its purest form. God's given it to me exactly. Remember that old expression? Be careful what you ask for, because you just may get it. And it's true. We do get what we call for. So again, everything has to do with my spirit versus my ego. My spirit versus my ego. Which one do I wish to serve? Remember when Christ said, you can't serve two masters. Pick one. Because you're going to hate one or the other. So he said, when you're serving this one is getting in the way. When I'm serving this one's getting in the way. If I'm truly serving just my ego, my spirit's going to get in the way. Because my spirit's crying for love, and it's crying for reality, and it's crying to wake up.
Which is where I think you feel guilt.
Which is where, yeah, but you know who's making you feel guilty?
Here you go.
The ego is making you feel guilty, and the cycle continues. And it will continue until you have had sufficient amount of experiences to the point where you can do this. You can say, I am awake, I'm one with God, and I don't have an attachment to the form. It's a tall order, yes, I grant you. It's not an easy task. And anyone who tells you it's so easy to wake up in this world has never really woken up. This is the hardest thing anyone's going to ever attempt in all of creation, is to awaken and be free of the attachment to all perceptions. That requires tremendous amount of dedication. And that's what Christ was referring to when he said you must be vigilant in every given moment. Because just when you think that you've mastered it, something comes up and triggers you. When the Course would say, when something comes up and triggers you, in that moment, look at that person and bless them, because they just brought you a gift. They are your savior, is what the Course would say. Well, someone pissed me off. How are they saving me?
Well, they're your teacher, giving
my
you the
teacher.
opportunity to, well, not be pissed off.
They triggered a reaction, you had this emotion, and you could tell it wasn't a loving emotion.
Right.
So if you're recognizing how you're feeling, then that ought to tell you, okay, that's the wrong direction, something's not right here.
So the universe, we won't even say the Holy Spirit, the universe used somebody to show me there was something that I was holding down and repressing, and I wasn't cleansed enough to be completely centered, in other words. So yes, that person brought me a gift. It's like I had a wound that I covered over with a Band-Aid and not looked at for a while, and it's infected and it's turning gangrene, and somebody pulls the Band-Aid away and makes me look at it. They did me a favor. Now I can address that. Otherwise, it's like, oh, that I don't have a problem. Oh, don't worry. No, we do have to cleanse ourselves to some degree. Once we get to that point where I don't have any perceptions any longer, now I'm awake.
Well, wouldn't that just obviate everything? I mean, aren't you cleansed the moment you wake?
Absolutely I am, the moment I'm awake, absolutely. But for most people, we go through a process. We go through an evolution of consciousness. It's what the dimensions of time and space are here for us. That's why the Course says there's two complete thought systems. We go through a whole thought system before we reach the atonement. That's option A. Now the Bhagavad Gita says that's one way home. The Bhagavad Gita says there's the evolutionary track, that's one way. Then it says there's another option where you can circumvent that long road home and just wake up. That's option B. That's what Bhagavad Gita says. The quickest way to awaken is to be awake.
Then we might be awake and asleep, we kind of step back and forget.
And if that happens, then all that means is you need some more validation within yourself. Okay, great. But what we're laying down here over and over and over again is the principles of how the mechanism of creation works, so that you are fully conscious enough to recognize that it's available to you as an option. Okay? That's my job, is to present that to you. Then you do what you're going to do, whatever, but know that it's possible. Know that Christ came here to demonstrate it was possible. That's how he was a savior. He didn't die on a cross and save your sins so that boom, you're awake. Obviously, look at the world. Look at most Christians. The average Christian, I'd say, is not walking in unconditional love. They're not awake. So what they teach is very, very far off from what he came here to present. He came here to present the atonement is possible, and he was going to demonstrate that it's doable within a human condition. And that's why the Bible says it behooved him to be made just like man, with an ego mind, just like us. He had his struggles, just like us, and he overcame. Remember in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus talked about overcoming the world. He says, if you overcome this world, you will not be hurt by the second death. Overcoming the world means moving outside of the thought system of man. That's overcoming the world. That's all. It doesn't mean you have to go somewhere. It doesn't mean you have to build something. It just means you have to get over yourself. That's all. And what we just read here, how should the teacher of God spend his day? Well, if I get over myself, what am I going to do? I don't know. I don't know, literally. I don't know. Most likely tomorrow I'll scoop some more ice cream. But the idea is, I don't have to. I don't have to do that. I don't have to do this. I'll do something. Obviously, we're all going to do something. But I don't even have to know. And that's a hard thing for a businessman, I know. It's very, very hard for us to say, oh, wait a minute. No, that doesn't mean I can't take care of my bills. I remember hearing somebody one time saying, you know, just because I'm enlightened, that doesn't mean I don't remember my zip code. You don't have to become mindless, and it doesn't mean you can't pay your bills, and it doesn't mean you can't function in the world. It just means you do it from a whole different mindset.
But that brings up what you were talking about earlier.
Right.
That also doesn't mean you can't plan.
It depends on where you're coming from when you're doing your planning, but we won't get into that.
That's the important one.
See, the point is this. Yes, I can be aware of the fact that I have a dentist appointment in 2 weeks. I can be aware of that, and I can make, you know, okay, I'm going to mark it on my calendar, I'm going to do this.
Right.
That's fine. It's when the ego comes into mind and my fear, false evidence appearing real, comes in, and I'm now putting all the energies of the fear-based mind into my planning.
Yeah, but if
That's
you're planning a sign, and instead of thinking of it fear-based, it's agape love, what's wrong with that?
Well, the moment, as I say, the moment you're conscious enough that you can, you know,
Make a plan.
take all of this in, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But all I'm saying is, until you get to a certain level, most of the thoughts of your future and the
Right.
preparations are going to be fear-based.
I realize that.
But anyway, we'll go on to the next paragraph here. Maybe we'll get more clarity as we go. Want to go, Gary?
But what about those who have not reached his certainty?
That's a good one.
They are not yet ready for such lack of structuring on their own part. What must they do to learn to give the day to God? There are some general rules which do apply, although each one must use them as best he can in his own way. Routines as such are dangerous because they easily become gods in their own right, threatening the very goals for which they were set up. Broadly speaking, then, it can be said that it is well to start the day right. It is always possible to begin again should the day begin with error. Yet there are obvious advantages in terms of saving time.
Well, what do we think of that? I see Ann's really thrilled with it. Don't understand it. Well, let's break it down.
Bring it down.
But what about those who have not reached certainty? So in other words, if you're not already fully awakened or you're not conscious enough, they are not yet ready for such lack of structuring on their own part, which is what I was saying. What am I going to do tomorrow? I don't know. Do I need to know? I don't need to know if I'm one with God, right? But if you're not there, then what do you do? What must they do to learn to give the day to God? There are some general rules which do apply, although each one must use them as best he can in his own way. Everything's going to be specific and unique to every individual. Again, you know that term, everything is relative. Okay? Wherever anyone happens to be on their unfoldment of consciousness, between these two states of spiritual awareness and ego-based awareness, wherever someone happens to be, they're on a unique frequency, right? So obviously, what one person should experience in the next moment is not necessarily good for the next one, right? We go to a doctor's office. One person has a heart condition and one has a liver problem. They're not going to take the same medication, right? Totally different things. Well, every experience we have is unique for every individual. That's what the Course is saying here, right? It has to be specific for the individual. Then, Routines, it's talking about routines as such, are dangerous because they easily become gods in their own right, threatening the very goals for which they were set up. So again, the routine, if you're getting into a routine and you're thinking that this is the way it should always be, you're not necessarily open to change. Remember when Einstein said you can't correct a problem with the same mindset that created the problem. If I create a routine and my mind is always going in that same pattern, how open am I to change? I'm not open anymore, right? This is why the Bible talks about meditation being a key, right? It says you should meditate on a daily basis. What happens when we meditate? We're breaking that cycle, right? We're breaking the cycle of the pattern that we're caught up in, right? And we get caught up in patterns in this world. We all do. We all have these patterns, thought systems, thought beliefs that we've adopted as our reality. You keep that mindset the same over and over and over again, where's the change going to come from? Where's the growth? So that's why it's talking about routines here. Could be. I'm not saying they always are, but they can be a potential problem. Right?
So we should get in the routine of meditation.
Well, I would definitely, routine of meditation is crucial.
Okay, that's a routine.
Yeah, well, let me say this. There are certain things that are going to be advantageous behavior and certain things that may be negative. Okay, meditation, I would always say. Now, I'll say this, Gary.
Which tends to be connecting to God,
Yes.
connecting to Spirit.
And I know I've shared this in here with you in the past. I said I got into a routine of meditation. I was meditating day in the morning and at night, and then in between, and then I was meditating hour upon hour working on my first book. And then I finally got to a stage, meditation was pulling me from being in the moment. Okay, so at one point it was a positive step, and then once it became a routine, and once it changed form.
So even that as such could have become dangerous, becoming a god in its own right, where the focus was the meditation.
There you go.
Where you didn't need quite that much.
Exactly.
I understand.
There was one guy I remember meeting some years back, and he was on his journey, and he was so aware of not being addicted to anything, or having to have certain things. And I remember this one woman saying to him, you have an addiction to non-addiction. You see what I'm saying? You become obsessed with not getting addicted to something, and that becomes your addiction. You see how we can take anything to an extreme? That's what it's talking about here. Just a thought. Just something to consider. What else to discover? There's also to begin again. Now here's something. It is also to begin. It's possible to begin again should the day begin with error. Okay, so I wake up in the morning, and rather than being spiritually connected, my ego's at play, and I get caught up in the moment. It's possible for me to 5 minutes later, or an hour later, or 5 hours later. Wait a minute. Oh, where am I going? I begin all over again. Remember, now always is, right? The moment I wake up to the realization that my ego is got a hold of me, I can stop it at any moment, can't I? I can change the energies up, just like that. I can. That's what this is saying. You can always begin again. I don't care whether it's I've been awake for 12 hours and my ego has been consuming me and I'm lost in it. At any given moment, 12 hours later, I can say, hey, I'm awake. Now always is. Very, very important. And this is where quantum mechanics comes into play, where linear time is not a true restriction on us, spiritually speaking. Very important point. When you can accept that you as a spiritual being exist beyond the context of linear time, you open the doorways to these experiences. If you can't accept that, you haven't opened those doorways and you can't have the experience. Because your belief system won't allow it in. You see how this works? As you believe, so shall it be. You will set the whole dynamics of what limitations you have. You're in charge of you. Be careful of what you adopt as your beliefs. Very, very important. So now that paragraph makes more sense? Simple, right? Simple stuff. So anyway, number 3. Would you like to read that, Ann?
At the beginning, it is wise to think in terms of time. This is by no means the ultimate criterion, but at the outset, it is probably the simplest to observe. The saving of time is an essential early emphasis which, although it remains important throughout the learning process, becomes less and less emphasized. At the outset, we can safely say that time devoted to starting the day right does indeed save time. How much time should be so spent? This must depend on the teacher of God himself. He cannot claim the title until he has gone through the workbook, since we are learning within the framework of our course. After completion of the more structured practice periods, which the workbook contains, individual need becomes the chief consideration.
So at the beginning, it's wise to think in terms of time, because at the beginning stages, without having the experience, we all have an ego-based thought system that we have to deal with. I remember in my book, I talked about the fact that it's very interesting how we must engage our ego mind to begin the process of going beyond the ego mind. Right? It has to join us at the beginning. You have to state your intention. Right? If I'm not awake and my ego mind is pretty much got me on autopilot, I have to engage that ego mind to start the process. Right? And that ego mind believes in linear time. As the process goes, and as the experiences unfold, my belief system starts to change a little bit, and I can start to accept that the now is comprised of one eternal moment. I exist as a spiritual being beyond time and space. I can experience that as we go deeper into your own journey and your own experiences. Until you have those experiences for yourself and validate it for yourself, you won't accept it. I'll grant you that. But as you do, it becomes less and less necessary for you to believe in time. That's what the Course is trying to say here. And it also talks about the fact that, see, we jumped through the book, and we're back to the section for teachers here, only because we've already had a foundation, which unfortunately you weren't with us. We had a foundation of going through my book before we got into this, and to my thinking, we already have a pretty good understanding of this before we pick this book up. And this is kind of like just verifying everything that we've talked about. But I would say to somebody, this is a great book to study, to look at, and anytime you want to reinforce that agape love concept, there are things in this book that will help you tremendously. This book talks about time and space. I remember reading at one point, and it said, all of time and space will be adjusted to accommodate your decision. Now, it's really getting into quantum mechanics here. Even when you understand what that statement means from the quantum view, you will recognize that the past does not have to have a bearing on who you are in this moment. It has not. If from the ego's view, the ego lives in terms of linear. The past, the present, and the future are the rules that the ego lives by. Right? If I have a problem with someone, and I see him next month, and I hold that thought back here somewhere, whatever the conflict was, whatever this disagreement we had, I hold it in the back of my mind, and next month I encounter that person. Okay? And I'm upset when I see them. Isn't the past part of that present moment?
Definitely.
It has to be, otherwise I can't be upset with them, right?
Right.
If I was totally in the now moment, without any preconceived thoughts that I brought with me, I'd have no problem with that person. And what would we be exchanging? A loving moment, right? We have no history. I have no history. I got nothing against that person. We have a beautiful moment. Wow, love it.
But if it all exists at once,
right?
why wouldn't it be there too?
Well, now let's say this. And you're right, it is there. But you're not aware of it, are you?
No.
You're not aware of it, not if you're in a judgmental mind, not if you've brought your past judgment in. You're in a delusion. You're in a dream. This Course in Miracles says that's not real. But you're experiencing it, aren't you? If you carry that energy with you, in the moment, you carry some resentment with someone, and you engage in that moment with them, and the energies of you're experiencing something that's not real. That's what the Course would say. That's not real. What's real? They're a perfect creation of God. So are you. And what you're holding on to has no truth. It's not valid in terms of ultimate reality. That's what the Course says. That which is real cannot be threatened. That which is unreal, false evidence appearing real, doesn't even exist. When you can really, really embrace that as being true and valid, you'll experience the peace that the Course is talking about. Herein lies the peace of God. When you can accept that, you will experience peace. If you don't accept that, you're going to experience friction.
And what was helpful for me is to learn to try to give up judgment. Because it's the judgment of the past, the judgment of what happened that causes the problems. And while we're holding that judgment, it's hard for us to accept the moment. So if we can not judge and accept everyone as perfect creations of God, other units of consciousness, other spiritual beings, accept that, then none of the rest matters.
And you're at peace.
And so it's learning to get rid of the judgment and achieve that acceptance.
So I can read Hitler tomorrow.
Yes.
And if I'm not in judgment,
Right?
then I will be one with him, one with...
Sure. Right. Now, you couldn't do that if you have an attachment to your belief system that this world in your judgmental mind is the standard to use. If you believe that, no, you're not gonna allow him the luxury of being innocent. And this is why the Course says, if you accept this, if you want to know love, if you want to know agape love, everyone in creation has to be innocent, equally innocent. You can't hold back that love from anyone in creation, and you can't judge anyone in creation and be here.
Okay. Now love is I think I'd like it defined.
Yeah, I knew she was
Right, yeah.
in that direction.
Right. Yeah, because we've talked in here, and I like to say that love, as we're talking about it, agape love, is the same love that the Bible speaks of when it says God is love, and God is that which never changes. Okay? Jesus said, the Father will never judge you. Now, how many in here believe God will never judge you. Okay, all right, good. We're all in agreement. God will never judge you. So, can you imagine, again, imagine, Einstein said, imagination is greater than wisdom, or greater than knowledge, right? Can you imagine for a moment, you say God's never going to judge you, and I agree, 150%, God will never judge you. Can you imagine for a moment what it would be to not judge anyone? Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Good. Can we all do that?
Well, that means no judging Hitler either.
Well,
No judging.
okay,
yeah.
fine. So we all say we can imagine we know God's not going to judge us. We can imagine what it is not to judge. So now, can you imagine yourself living that right here, right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I get it. It's like
You
being
get it.
backstage,
Sure.
After the play's gone on,
Okay,
So
yeah.
you're backstage and
Yeah, there you go.
it's all good.
Yeah, there you go.
But this thing with love, love, God is love. God is hate. God is everything.
Whoa. No. Okay.
Let's see.
Now this is where I'm in agreement with the Course, would say this. Yes, in terms of the fear-based thought system, and over here, God is hate. God is evil. Right? God is good. On this side, this is dualistic view.
Judging.
The judgmental side, God is all these things.
But love is judgmental too.
Well, agape love is not. Okay, agape love is a level, here's how I would describe agape love. A level of awareness of this moment as what it truly is.
Total acceptance.
Without having any judgment placed upon it. That to me is the definition of love. It's not an emotion. Okay?
So love is lack of judgment.
Yeah, love would be lack of judgment. Yes, that would be God. We just said, well, God will never judge us. Well, imagine, Einstein said, I want to know how God thinks the rest of the details. Okay, so if God's not judging, how does God think? Think like God now.
Okay, so that's not judgment.
Total acceptance, huh?
Why is that love?
Well, because we don't have a definition for it. We've done this class for so many years.
Well, I was just going to say, what's the earthly view of love?
Well, it's different, obviously, right?
You're right.
Yeah, to me, the earthly view of love.
We run into that from time to time where we just don't have a proper definition. So you use what words are in our vocabulary to make it work.
There's
And the
romantic
word-
love versus agape love.
Right. Romantic
They're
love
totally
or judgment love, even for our own child. I love my child, but gosh darn it, you go running off this, and I'll disown you, You go killing someone, I'll disown you, or whatever the case may be. But agape love is, I'm not going to judge you. I realize you're a spiritual being, and you've got to go through your own learning in this dimension, and I wish you well, but I'm not going to partake in judging what you do in this dimension. I love you and everybody out there for who they are as a spiritual brother and sister.
Love is still to me, love is still a dualistic.
That's because you're looking at it from the fear-based thought system.
Only because I think that if you're in the awakened state, it's more like being.
Yeah, love would, from the awakened state, love would go beyond the linear mind, beyond linear time. Love, from that level, from the awakened state, love is timeless. That's why it says God is that which never changes. God doesn't change. What changes is our position and our view of what love is. The ego is changing all the time. Love used to mean this, it means that now. Love meant this, it means that. But ultimately, love doesn't change. The ego changes its view on love constantly. Constantly.
She mentioned love is like being. Is that
Right, that's what she
So I'm
said.
saying the experience of being is beyond love.
Well, or that is like agape love. I think that approaches the same thing we're talking about. Being, accepting, not judging.
Well, if you're being
Being
one,
present in
if you're
the
being
now moment.
one,
Right.
then
One with all that is, which is God. One with God.
why does love come into it?
Well, you
Well,
call it
then we
whatever you
need another
want.
word.
Call it whatever you
No,
want.
for the lack of a different word, that's why agape love is drawing a distinction between what most people would just use the word love. Okay? Agape love would be unconditional love. Meaning, in order to experience unconditional love, I would have to totally remove any form of judgment to right and wrong, good and bad. Right? Otherwise, it's conditional. It varies. And in order to have unconditional love, there can be no variation here. There can be no good, no bad. And this is what Jesus meant when they went to him and said, call him good master. How did he respond? Don't call me good. Okay? The Bhagavad Gita, which we've talked about in here, the Bhagavad Gita talks about the different stages of levels of awareness that we go through. And it says, we begin in the mode of ignorance, then we move into the mode of passion, then we move into the mode of goodness, all stages in development for the ego-based thinking mind. That's not love. It's going from a bad ego to a good ego. Okay? That's not love. The best ego in the world is not unconditionally loving because it's buying into a judgmental view. In order to see good, I'm saying there's bad. It exists. That's pure ego, human, judgmental mind. Jesus is saying, don't call me good. When they went to him and said, what do we do? I've been good. I followed the commandments. Now, Master, what do I do? He says, go be perfect. Never mind good. Go be perfect. Well, can you be perfect? Could we?
Yeah.
We could if we don't think, if we don't judge. If I judge, I'm no longer perfect. I'm going to judge that person, I'm going to judge that person, and I'm going to judge this person if I'm going to judge.
And we've used many examples of good and evil. Since we're not omniscient, we never really know if something is good or evil. It's hard to really know in the moment because a lot of good comes out of what we think is a bad situation, and it all balances out in this world, and all things work for good. And so we really can't judge anything because we don't know the whole reality of the whole thing. So that makes it a little easier to not judge and to accept.
Well, see, I see non-judging as part of being one with everything, because if you're one with it,
You're one with it.
then you can judge something that, that doesn't, there is no duality then, so you can't, no object can be the object of your judgment. So that's when you stop judging. And it's interesting because when you mentioned that last week, I was very aware of it all week. Being in a non-judgmental state and constantly catching myself. And I lived a phenomenal week. I floated through this week.
Wow.
It was really great. But it was a sense of not having another to judge.
It's kind of a relief, isn't it, to think, I don't have to judge that. They'll suffer their own consequences. I don't have to save anybody, help anybody, judge anything. It is what it is, and accept that. Life is good.
Remember when Jesus said, you shall learn the truth and the truth shall set you free? What you just described was the truth he was alluding to. The state of being without judgment is your perfected state. Yours and everyone else's. Now, what you demonstrated through your willingness to entertain that and experience that, you became the light of the world in those moments. You became, when the Bible says Jesus is saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one gets to the Father except by me, what you just experienced is what he was referring to when he made that statement. It didn't mean, hey, I'm the only begotten Son, now get on your knees and call yourself a Christian. No, it means do as I do. Live this.
And imagine if everyone was non-judgmental and accepting, what a wonderful place it would be.
Yeah, appointment.
Wow. So, shall we finish up this? Wow, no, we got a lot on this stuff. I don't know. We're gonna finish.
Wow.
I don't know. Wow, we picked a big one here. Anyway.
So habits, a habit of non-judgment is good though, right?
A habit of non-judgment. The Course would say this. The Course would say, there's never a time when judgment is appropriate, except, it has that one exception, except this. When you are observing yourself judging. When you catch yourself judging, that's the one time that it's appropriate. Now, there will come a time, as I said before, when I first started meditating, it was a huge, huge catalyst to bring me and center me and free me of the worldly mind, quiet the white noise, so to speak. It was great. And as I did it more and more and more, and then it got to be, wow, now that became the distraction to pull me from being. When you become consciously cognizant of your judging self, at first, that's great. Practice that. Practice that, practice that, practice that. Then it gets to the point where you'll find that you don't have to practice being, because you will just be. You'll understand what Gandhi meant when he said, be the change you would wish to see in the world. Now this is why in here I've talked many, many times of the now moment and think in terms of quantum reality. Because that which you're trying to aspire to already exists. That perfected state, with all of us are saying, wow, yeah, I'd like to be perfect. Your perfected state already exists. God created it. That's why the Course says, what God created can't be touched. You, when you wake up, will realize that you were never, ever anything except for a perfect creation of God that was deluding yourself into your own false beliefs. Wow. Yeah.
Well, you can't blame us.
No, I'm not blaming anybody anything. I'm just stating
Hey,
facts.
don't judge me, man.
I'm not judging anybody.
How much of one man can you stand? You know, you gotta branch out and entertain yourself.
That's right.
Sometimes you're on company, so you have to forget.
Wow.
Okay, want me to do 4?
Yeah, why
Let
don't
me
we?
do
Yeah.
it.
You do it?
Yeah.
Mick's gonna do
Because
it.
I already got my notes. This course is, am I right?
Yeah.
This course is always practical. It may be that the teacher of God is not in a situation that fosters quiet thought as he awakes. If this is so, let him but remember that he chooses to spend time with God as soon as possible, and let him do so. Duration is not the main concern. One can easily sit still an hour with eyes closed and accomplish nothing. One can as easily give God only an instant, and in that instant join with him completely. Perhaps the one generalization that can be made is this: as soon as possible after waking, take your quiet time, continuing a minute or two after you begin to find it difficult. You may find that the difficulty will diminish and drop away. If not, that is the time to stop.
Kind of what I was referring to. One can easily sit. We're not. Remember, I told you about this gentleman that I knew. He had this problem that he wanted to work on, and we meditated together. And after 20 minutes, he said he opens his eyes. I got it. My guides told me da 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 da, and his ego mind was right there with him in that meditation. And we can sit and and I can go in a lotus position and do all kinds of whatever and sit there and meditate and close my eyes and not really connect with spirit. It's possible. Or I can just have an instant and be awake to this moment, and I'm done. I don't have to sit for a duration of time for this to be effective. That's what the Course is trying to say. Don't put any kind of distinction on what has to be for you to make this leap in this connection. If 20 minutes works for you, do 20 minutes. If a minute works for you, do a minute. Realizing that your objective is to wake up to agape love in this now moment. That's the objective. That's it. What's it going to take to do that? It's going to be different for everybody. Don't worry about it. But it also says this: when you wake up in the morning, take the time in the morning to set the tone, because you're setting up a frequency, you're setting up an energy and a vibration. Remember I said in here, this guy I used to work with, one of his favorite things was it's easier to maintain than to take off regarding weight. If I wake up in the morning and I'm conscious and I create a habit, of turning my moment over to spirit and staying centered. That's the intent I state for the day. Okay, if I forget, I can go back. I go back. But if I don't set that tone to begin with, what's going to happen? Rather than this kind of energy to start the day, I'm starting with this kind of energy, right? And I'm operating on this energy, and remember the law of attraction? What am I attracting? I'm attracting on this level. Okay? And now, how the hell did I get into this? I thought I was way beyond getting, so we get caught up into these cycles. Like attracts like. You state your intention up here, you're going to attract these kind of energies. You state your intention down here, you're going to attract this kind of energy. Just again, mechanics of creation, how it works. That's why the Course is saying this.
The same procedure should be followed at night. Perhaps your quiet time should be fairly early in the evening if it is not feasible for you to take it just before going to sleep. It is not wise to lie down for it. It is better to sit up, in whatever position you prefer. Having gone through the workbook, you must have come to some conclusions in this